it is a technology that I think has now proven its relevance. It has now proven its usefulness. And, we are definitely still a long way away from kind of mass adoption. But I think people are starting to come around to the fact that this isn't just a fad.
So I am sat with Debbie Soon, Head of Marketing for Privy. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me here today.
So welcome to the Aptos experience. How has it been for you so far?
It is a beautiful build out, looks incredible, feels like you took all of New York City and put it into this really cute space, and it looks great.
You basically fill the entire underground into a convention building.
Every single thing that is unique to New York City, you can find it here, so I love it.
So I have to address the elephant in the room, which is that both you and I are Singaporean.
Yes.
And I think that's given us a really interesting perspective as it relates to, I guess, crypto marketing and what crypto feels like, sounds like, looks like within Asia, and then how it's sort of talked about out here in the States. How have you sort of navigated that difference, and how would you define the relationship that we have on either side of the world?
Yeah, that is such an interesting question. I guess because crypto by nature is global, and I would say probably one of the most global industries that I've worked in from day one. And yet I think there's obviously a lot of developments that happen in Asia that people in America are naturally unaware of. At the same time, coming from Singapore, which is actually pretty lax in terms of regulation and pretty open, I would say that it's been interesting. Obviously, a lot of my work is still kind of focused here in the US, especially with regards to stablecoin regulation. I think there tends to be a lot more conversation around things like the Genius Act and a little bit less focus on what's happening in specific countries in Southeast Asia. But at the same time, we always send people from Privy to conferences all around the world. We had people just on the ground at Token 2049, and there were a lot of exciting announcements there. And I'm excited to see how the world gets increasingly more connected. Already the internet did wonders for that. And I think crypto is really just that next level as we see how this new economy develops.
So you have a pretty rich background when it comes to crypto marketing, but you joined Privy relatively recently. So how has that experience been? And more broadly, so what are the lessons throughout your career history that you've brought into this Web3 marketing role?
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say I've never really considered myself a marketer. In fact, I think I label myself an accidental marketer. My career started off in traditional finance. I was working at a Singapore sovereign wealth fund. I moved into live sports and then moved to the US about 4.5 years ago, which was when I started really getting into crypto and working in the space full time. And then I've been at Privy for the past 6 months. So I would say, I think everyone would agree that 1 year in crypto probably feels like 5 or 10. And, having been in the space for the past 4 to 5 years, I've definitely lived through the ups and downs and through a lot of different cycles. And I think what has really served me well actually has been also having the perspective of what my life and career was like before crypto. And, specifically understanding that certain things tend to while there are near-term ups and downs, certain things just tend to play out over longer cycles. So I would say that, my approach to marketing in crypto is to always kind of have your ear on the ground in terms of what the latest memes are. Those are definitely important, and it's definitely critical sometimes even to be a part of the conversation. But at the same time, to not let it distract you from what the bigger picture and what the bigger mission is at hand. And, for Privy, it has always been to abstract away crypto complexity, not just for users, but also for builders. And we believe that would make crypto adoption, getting on chain a lot easier. And, we've really been seeing that, over the past few years. And so we're just, really staying focused on that and making sure that in spite of all of the noise, that we can keep our heads down and keep doing the good work.
So how do you actually strike that balance? Because not only that, Privy was recently acquired by Stripe. So there is also this really interesting relationship between kind of going corporate, but then also sticking with the Web3 ethos that kind of guides why Privy was built in the first place. So how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I mean, Privy was really born from the trenches in crypto. I would say that I would like to think that we are a beloved crypto native brand. And, at the same time, Stripe has actually been working in crypto or has had, initiatives in crypto and stablecoin payments over the past several years as well. And, I think this is a great opportunity for both brands to really come together and to leverage all of the great resources that Stripe has, and just allows us to, really build faster and move faster and do things in a way that still serves the customers that we know and learn. I think at the same time, that is just great opportunity for both brands to learn from each other. So, while we still serve a lot of, crypto native builders, whether it's in the trading and DeFi space or consumer crypto, we are also starting to serve a lot of enterprise customers too. And we're starting to see that, I think, especially in the adoption of stablecoins, in the adoption of real world assets. And obviously that's where Stripe definitely has a little bit more credibility. And I think on the flip side, Stripe is also starting to learn about the idiosyncrasies, I guess, of crypto. I think we just have a great relationship right now where we can exchange this knowledge that we have. And at the same time, be really clear that, they're not slowing us down, and where we can plug in more into the Stripe ecosystem, we will continue to do so.
So what is it like to build a brand where there's legitimacy of a parent brand coming in, but it's also in a way that where I think we have a tricky relationship with legitimacy in our industry. We kind of like this cypherpunk degen sort of approach where everyone's building from this grassroots community level. So when we see these behemoths come in, not everyone is on board with it. So how do you navigate that against, the bigger ethos of decentralization in crypto?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually wrote about this not too long ago. And I said that it's funny because, yes, I think crypto was born out of this counterculture, if you will, the original Bitcoin white paper. It wasn't just, a technological piece of paper, right? It was also kind of a call to arms. It was also in some sense a manifesto. Yes. And so crypto in some sense was kind of born from that. Yeah. And then at the same time, I think the crypto industry also craves legitimacy, right? Like they spend all of these years, kind of being the underdogs. And then when they hear news like, Stripe acquiring Privy, or, even before Stripe acquired Privy and they acquired Bridge, there was all of this chatter around like, oh, this is so great that institutions are starting to pay attention to crypto. Oh, that's so great that we have an administration or we're in a regulatory environment that is providing clarity over what NFTs are and what meme coins are and what are securities and all of that. So I think it's funny because which is why I say this is an industry that tends to contradict itself sometimes.
Yes, I was going to say it was a very dogmatic shift to go from pure anti-establishment to thank God the regulators are here.
Yeah, and it's like they want to be anti-establishment. And I think to some extent, a lot of the industry is still anti-establishment, but at the same time, they do want these signals and they do want these news and they do want the industry to move in that direction because, for whatever reason, hopefully it is better for our bags, right? Not financial advice, but at least it shows that, Bitcoin wasn't just something that somebody conceived and a pseudonymous person conceived out of thin air, and that actually this technology has real world applications and is, really applicable to everyday lives. So I think back to the question on how does it sit when people see large companies coming in, I think that they're always going to feel a certain kind of way. I think at the end of the day, and I say this about marketing as well, obviously we want to build products that people, that solve problems and add value for people. But at the same time, it's also about how can we really build empathy with the audiences and the users that we are serving. And I think for Privy in particular, sure, we know that, I think self-custody has always been something that's been really important to us, which is why by default, all of the embedded wallets that we provide are, completely self-custodial, in that the user that, they create a wallet with an email address, but they can export their private keys. They have full ownership over their assets. We've always believed in that decentralized ethos. And then there will be customers that we have that actually don't really believe in a self-custodial setup and they want something a little bit different. And I think it's about really knowing who to serve as our customers at the end of the day, and making sure that we speak to them in a language that really appeals to them and understands them.
And meeting them where they're at.
Exactly.
So then I feel often as an industry, we take sort of 3 steps forwards and 2 steps back. So we are making incremental progress. There's no doubt about that. But I feel like we almost have to endure that sense of loss each and every time. So how do you keep motivated through each of these short-term cycles that really sort of, they don't just test your stamina and your patience, but your emotional endurance as well?
Yeah. I always come back to this thing that I ask a lot of people when, anything that they do in life, and it's basically, what is your why? Like, why are you here? And if you're somebody that is just getting started in crypto, or if you're someone who's been in crypto for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what is the why that kind of made you excited about it in the first place? And talking about myself personally, I think part of the thing that really got me, riled up and excited about crypto 4 to 5 years ago was that I appreciated how early we were. And to some extent, I still think that we're incredibly early. And I know it sounds so cliche and so trite that, we're so early. But that was the thing that, really excited me, because I felt I, as an individual, alongside other great people, have this real opportunity to shape an industry that still hasn't really taken shape yet. The things that we're not happy with right now, we have the ability to really build and really design something that we feel would be better for future generations. And, coming from the industries that I worked in previously, traditional finance, I came from media, like these are industries that have been, operated in a certain kind of way for 100 years. And, to disintermediate all of those structures was going to take, much longer, and it was going to take, I don't know what kind of revolution it would have required, but in some sense, crypto is that revolution, right? And I think it goes back again to what we were just discussing before on that counterculture point. So, I think what keeps me going through all of the cycles is just kind of reminding myself that the reason why I chose this industry, the reason why I am incredibly passionate about this, is that I think that fundamentally, as unreasonable as we may be sometimes as a community, that we are ultimately a group of dreamers, but not just dreamers, we're also dreamers that do, and we are dreamers that build. And it's just really exciting to be a part of that.
We're just a group of really moody dreamers.
Yeah, very disgruntled dreamers that like to complain from time to time, but yes.
Online dreamers, minimal sleep. But I think that's so interesting, because I do think we've all collectively jumped into a space that's still very proactively trying to figure out what it's trying to be. And not only are we sort of seeing Web3 as this revolution or crypto as this revolution, but there have been so many mini revolutions within that pool as well. So it's kind of, we've had to watch ourselves transform and pivot time and time again. But what's the sort of, I guess, central conviction that you have that is going to take us through to the end, or whatever that end outcome looks like?
Yeah, I think transact I do believe that blockchain technology presents a better way for people to really transact with each other. And transact sounds by definition transactional, but I think that comes in a way in which we consume content. So I think you can look at creators as a bucket. And there are better ways that creators can monetize their content. There are better ways that us as fans can support our favorite creators, and that's just one segment. And then you look at payments. Blockchain technology offers a better way of settling payments across borders, and I think we're really seeing that in action today with all the talk around stablecoins and all of the numbers that are being thrown out there. And sure, it sounds a little bit like hype, like everyone is, launching their new stablecoin, and there's good reason for that as well. But I think fundamentally, and when we look at what it is, it's just a more efficient way of moving value across the internet. And then, that's not even getting into things like real world assets and tokenizing things like securities, or tokenizing things like commodities even. And, then we start to get into areas where we're really, really still at the early innings of adoption. And I'm sure we'll figure things out. Like you said, we will have to pivot and iterate, and we'll realize that, okay, maybe this is a revolution that wouldn't really quite take shape, and, it might come and go. But I think that fundamentally it is a technology that that I think has now proven its relevance. It has now proven its usefulness. And, we are definitely still a long way away from kind of mass adoption. But I think people are starting to come around to the fact that this isn't just a fad. This isn't just, the 40,000 times before that people had said that Bitcoin is dead. I think people are actually now looking at it as a reserve currency, as a form of digital gold. And so, I think and again, I've been active in this space for the past 4 to 5 years, so I wouldn't even consider myself the earliest of adopters. But having sat through all of this, in the past 4 to 5 years, I too feel kind of like, validated and vindicated, like that, hey, I wasn't a crazy person back in like 2021. Like, I'm actually working in an industry that's continuing to make moves and is continuing to make waves.
But then what's it going to take for us to have that breakout moment? Because we always talk about mainstream crypto marketing, but again, we shouldn't really have to convince anybody to have to do this. It should just be embedded in the way that we operate.
Yeah.
What's it going to take to get us there?
Yeah, and I think, we are, I will say that people have probably said we're moments away like every single year. But
it's always tomorrow.
Yeah, it's always tomorrow. But, I think so much work has gone into the infrastructure to make it, to make crypto usable. And I think that a lot of the times when we almost forget where we were sitting like just 3 years ago, where, L2s, there weren't that many L2s, there weren't that many alternative L1s, right? People were still burning hundreds of dollars on gas fees trying to mint an NFT. We forgot what it was like before embedded wallets was, part of the everyday user experience. And right now we actually have scaling solutions that makes transactions fast and cheap, right? Like, Bitcoin, as great as it is, if you've tried transferring Bitcoin before, it takes a really long time, and it's also incredibly expensive and, just not that efficient. And, we've seen, and then, when we move into things like Ethereum, we're seeing, okay, there's more programmability that we can do with the blockchain. And then we've had scaling on top of that. And I think bit by bit through every few years, we actually see infrastructure and the technology shift in a major way where all of a sudden crypto is usable and there are a lot more use cases that people can start exploring. And so I think that we will get to that point when really all of the wires are hidden. And I think we're slowly but surely moving in that direction. And you're right, because especially if we talk about stablecoins in particular, there's no need for someone to know whether this is a USDC or USDT or USDH, assuming everything holds their peg, which is not a given, depending on how the stablecoin is issued. It should just show up as dollar balances, right? It should have that cash equivalent. So, I think we are definitely still a little while away. I'm definitely not going to say that it's happening tomorrow, but I do think that we have a lot of the right instruments and ingredients in place to now being at the start of I think at the start of the next 2 to 5 year horizon where we will be surprised on the upside.
So if this isn't all going to happen tomorrow, what is our next milestone?
Yeah, great question. I think, I still think continued regulatory clarity is what is needed. And I know that, the US here, we talked a little bit about that, has, set some path for clarity for 2026. That is not the case for every single country. And so again, when we look at how global technology crypto is, and really the ethos of crypto is meant to be global and decentralized, and that anybody with an internet connection at the very least can participate in it. So, I think that as like every single country will operate at different paces, and some countries are always going to be followers versus kind of setting the trend. But I think definitely regulatory clarity across as many countries as possible. We will continue to see that. I think scaling solutions, I think they will continue to get faster, cheaper, and I think even on the Privy side, what we can do as wallet infrastructure, what more can we ship, what more features can we add to really make wallets, not just, and I say this all the time, that in crypto, a wallet isn't just a place, isn't just a vault where you keep your assets and then they just kind of sit there. A wallet is really a global bank account that you can now kind of take anywhere and everywhere, and you can take your assets and spend them, in Japan, or spend them in Singapore, or spend them in the US, or spend them over in Europe. And you can program your wallet to do all of these incredible things. You can have recurring payments. You could plug into other protocols to earn yield and earn higher interest on your idle balances that would otherwise just be sitting there doing, nothing. So, I think that there is a regulatory standpoint, there is continued, innovation and things that we need to do from a builder's standpoint. And then I think storytelling is also incredibly important, which is why I guess both of us are here. And it's also, what I think I really appreciate as a marketer, in that it's not just enough to have a good product. It's also really important to be able to shape that narrative and to shape that perception. And to also understand that, changing perceptions and changing narratives isn't going to happen overnight, and it has to really take a concerted effort of, everyone really, making sure that people understand what crypto is really being used for. And so it's great to see, folks like Aptos, and great to see folks like other, builders and people that are building on Privy as well, continue to show that in production, and to continue to show that in real life applications.
I mean, I do think that we consistently tweak the narrative that we're telling, but often the narrative is largely the same, but we might adjust the language based on the zeitgeist of the moment.
Yeah.
So it's basically, we're not really trying to reformulate or reinvent what we're trying to sell. We're just trying to communicate it in newer and more dynamic ways that might just resonate a little bit better than it did the first time we tried to tell you.
Yeah.
So I guess my final question for you is, what's next for not only Privy, but in terms of how you want to approach marketing? What are the trends that you're trying to anticipate for the following year? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, and I think it's, I know that by nature I am a pretty optimistic person, but, I also know that the reason why this space sometimes has a bad rap is because there are definitely bad actors in the space, and those tend to, negative headlines seem to attract more clicks, right? People seem to be drawn to, more negative news. So, I'm not going to say that we're not going to see those. Like, that's definitely going to happen, at some point, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's in the next few months, whether it's in the next year. There's going to be little blips like this that would once again kind of set the crypto narrative back a little bit. But in terms of what's next, obviously incredibly excited for Privy. Today I think we're already across over 100 million accounts, over 180 different countries. We've got about 2,000 apps in production. Obviously, we'd love to see that grow a lot more. And I think it's, not just about, the growth of Privy as a company, but I think it's what it means for, digital asset ownership. And, it's one of those things where we realize that there are very few things in life that we actually self-custody and cash, like actual physical cash is one of those things. Otherwise, most of the things that we own are actually being custodied by someone else. And so, how do we move towards this world where we have greater control, not just over our ownership, but also our identity? What kinds of opportunities does that unlock for us to interact with each other, and for us to consume content, and for us to then be incentivized to create better content? So I think I'm just generally, excited to see, again, infrastructure continuing to improve. More and more people coming on chain without even necessarily having to know that they are, and just, embracing crypto like the technology that it is, and, really being that next wave of the internet. Like, we all came online at some point. And so, I believe that gradually, a lot more people will be coming on chain. I'm going to be really excited for being a part of that movement.
So it's basically about continuing to focus on product development and catering to new user needs, but also having that all track back to the original mission that we actually all began with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for your perspective today. That was really fascinating and very fast-paced and snappy, so I really appreciated it. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.